we need to be quite clear that this discussion at the beginning of each of the modules, there needs to be some rules around that, you know, so because otherwise that's the first thing you're doing at the beginning of the day and everyone's getting fired up and angry, and you know, so I think just having some boundaries around that. Yeah, feel free to talk about your experiences, but I think if we start straying into kind of politics and personal agendas, it's going to ruin the rest of the session for people. So just having something.
Which is obviously challenging because it's highly political.
Yes.
But it's true, and you might want to think about having something at the beginning of the day in your agreement that you keep it professional, you keep it related to your job, the clients that you're working with, and not about you know, what's great about it and what's terrible about it. Lisa?
I'd just like to get your views as trainers, I think, well, maybe potentially as co-trainers. I mean, what are your kind of hints for if you get somebody who just starts talking on and on and on about their own experience and just keeps going, oh, and then this happened to me, and you know, people will often take the floor and just not stop talking. What are things you do to try to do
in that
like,
circumstance? Go up to them and say, you're bringing out some really fantastic points. They're kind of outside maybe what we're covering on this particular course. But if you could maybe share some stuff with us at lunchtime, that would be fantastic.
So acknowledge it.
It's hard to make me be quiet.
Acknowledge it. Don't
Body
dismiss
language,
it.
use your body language.
Yeah.
With that in mind about the fact that it's highly political and there's nothing we can do about it, to run a session around stuff that we can influence and stuff that we can't influence, just to take a couple of minutes before that conversation to thrash out what we can't influence. So the government will bring this in, there's nothing we can do about that.
I mean,
and then,
it's in, isn't it?
Yeah, and then we capture that on a bit of flip, and then when somebody starts talking about something that we've already agreed we can't influence, and you kind of direct them to the fact we've already agreed.
And we can also use, remember when we did Universal Credit and we had the parking ideas and the car park, and there was like a multi-storey car park for technical questions that perhaps the welfare reform tutor could answer, and
And it's true, if people want to go on a, I don't know, an anti-poverty alliance march, that's fine, but you do that out of our training environment. There's no space for that in here.
So
there are places where you go and when it starts.
I mean, I think you have to take the approach that it's your training environment. You are responsible for everybody having a good learning experience. So if there's one person who's messing that up, it's not just making your life really difficult as the trainer, it's spoiling everybody else's learning. So I think, within reason, you can say to people, leave the session. You know, I've invited people to leave and it really makes them shut up, I can tell you. You can say, you know, the door's there, you're welcome to leave. We're not going to be able to cover the things that you're looking for today. 9 times out of 10 people just shut up and get on with it.
And remember the time boundaries. We've got 10 minutes for this exercise, and you're also reminded, you know, 2 minutes to go. You know, and you give those time reminders throughout the exercise just to kind of make sure it doesn't run and run and run.
So acknowledge the person, don't dismiss them.
Acknowledge their issues. Because if you say, oh no, that's rubbish, we're not going to talk about that today, you've lost that person immediately. So acknowledge what they're saying. But then you need to explain that it's not necessarily appropriate for the environment that you're in, but if they want to have a chat with you at lunch break or during the breaks.
That and say, you know, that's something that we can't influence, or like Sarah said, well, that's really great, that's really interesting, maybe we can have a talk about that in the lunchtime. So finding ways to acknowledge it, but then ending the conversation and bringing it back to the topic, that's what you need to keep doing, because remember, you've got a time. It's really important to keep to the times.
So what we've been trained to do is that when we realize that somebody is under the influence of drug or alcohol, because you see them, they'll be very chatty. So it's better to like go to them and say, would they like to come back another time? Because that influence will actually affect the way it will disrupt the training. So I think it's better to actually look out for their movement, and then to ask them to come back another time instead of.
I hadn't even thought to put that on the ground rules at the beginning of the day, because you don't expect people to go wandering off for a drink at lunchtime. But if there's the likelihood that that might happen with the participants, then lock it into the ground rules at the beginning of the day. You can always refer to that.